what is wealth? I suggest that wealth is the experience and the generation of well-being. That breaks down into two areas: creating well-being for others and creating well-being for ourselves. If we look at money, which can be a form of wealth when it creates well-being for ourselves and others, there's two forms of wealth, two forms of value. One is creating value in the world for oneself or another. An example might be writing a book that helps inspire a new generation of thinking that leads to healing a particular disease. This is a creation of wealth. The other is capturing wealth. And that is, in the monetary sense, let's say that book generated new careers and perhaps $500 million in ripple effect revenue from all the different things that came from those ideas. But let's say the author, or you as the writer, only because of your contract with the publisher, only got $50,000 of that wealth. So you've created $500 million of wealth. You've captured $50,000 of the $500 million you've created. So there's a distinction between capturing and creating. And here's the reason that I think this distinction is really important. We're trained to focus probably 90% of our attention on capturing wealth, and only about 10% of our attention on generating wealth. Now, here's why this is so important. If I wanted to figure out how to capture any of the wealth of these YouTube videos, it would be very hard. If I want to focus on creating something new and offering it freely, it's incredibly easy. A lot of the wealth that is captured is not creating a significant amount of new value. An example would be a stock speculator who buys a stock at one day, contributes nothing to the value of the company or the stock, sells the stock later in the day, and makes a 1% profit or a 10% profit on, depending on how leveraged the purchase and sale is. That does not generate any value, but it can capture a lot of value. Warren Buffett is the master at catching or capturing value through investing. Over time, because of his name, he's also come to generate value, meaning just having his name connected with something and or the opportunity to consult with him as a business owner if he invests in your company creates value. Another example would be a middleman who sells something, buys something for a low price, transports it, and sells it. There's creating some value because they're moving something, they're providing, they're making it more available to an audience. But the generative type of value, to really see this, it's helpful to look at a concept called closed systems and open systems. So a closed system is a pie that's already been made. So someone makes an apple pie, and then the game begins. How much is each person going to get of that pie? And a pie is what's called a zero-sum game. a zero-sum game means that the more of that pie that you eat, the less somebody else eats. And so any given pie is a zero-sum game. And within the game of a closed system or a zero-sum game, you have the competition to see who will get the most of the pie. In a job or work scenario, let's say that you're a company owner and you are going to receive $200,000 of gross revenue from a client. That's the pie. Now the question comes, how much of that $200,000 are you, the business owner, going to capture and consume, and how much of the pie is going to be shared with suppliers, employees, and vendors, and overhead expenses. So let's say you're really successful and you find an employee who can work for $10 an hour rather than $20 an hour. Well, now you, as the employer, get to keep a bigger portion of that $200,000, all things being equal. So you've now shifted the pie so that within that $200,000 framework, you get more, the employees get less. Now this is what leads to the villainization of rich people. The assumption is that there is a limited amount of money, resources, etc., and therefore the fact that someone is rich means that they've taken a very big piece of the pie and everyone else gets this little bit of pie to divide up. And within a zero-sum game, within a closed system, that is absolutely the case. And this is why understanding how to open the system is so important. I want to talk a little bit about a situation that I experienced in my own company, a small landscape company, when I wanted to do something. I thought I was in a zero-sum game, and yet I really wanted my employees to feel great, so I gave them a $5 an hour raise, which put them, roughly $5 an hour more than the typical market rates. Now, I thought I was in a zero-sum game. I thought there was only so much time in the day. I thought, I'm going to have a lower income at the end of the year. But this is not actually what happened, because the employees were so excited and motivated by the extra money that, first of all, my employee turnover went down several 100%. Landscaping is a high turnover business with usually a fair amount of temporary workers. These workers did not want to leave. Second, that led to efficiencies where the ongoing training that I was giving went down. Thirdly, they were really keen to work more hours than I wanted to work. And so they took to working 60-hour weeks when I'm more comfortable working around 30 or 40 hours a week and then spending my time writing and doing other non-paid charitable type projects. But the fact that they had gained more training from hanging around, the fact that they were motivated, and the fact that they were working 60-hour weeks rather than 30 and 40-hour weeks actually meant that my gross revenues that year doubled over the year before, even as my need to supervise went down. And so this is an example of opening the system, because the truth was in the larger pie, there was a fair amount of demand for competent, reliable landscapers, but I was only open to the bit that I could micromanage. Giving more to my employees actually made the pie bigger. But we're still dealing within a limited pie of landscaping. But what I want to talk about is the way that in an open system, there is an endless amount of pie. Now, take, for example, electricity. I guarantee you there is a way to create electricity, whether it's nuclear fusion, whether it is growing a certain plant that creates a chemical reaction where a whole lake becomes a battery, where you just put two electrodes in different parts of that lake and you grow a certain algae or something in the lake and they polarize, and there's massive amounts of electricity, or wind, or solar, as Elon Musk is developing. When Elon Musk creates a new shingle, which I just watched recently, that generates electricity, lasts longer than normal shingles, is cheaper than normal shingles, and creates more and more low-cost electricity, what it does is it reduces the friction to innovation. It means that more and more people with less and less money and more creativity can actually do things that require electricity, which, for example, I'm in the Philippines, where the electricity is so poorly run that about a third of the Philippines has a backup generator, because the main electricity has so many brownouts, and the backup generators are more reliable than the main grid. And so huge amounts of money are spent on these redundancy factors, which is, it's not freed up. And having a more efficient and flexible system would open up an additional 30% of capital to go elsewhere and create well-being. Because generators create diesel fuel. They don't create well-being, except when you have brownouts. And so this concept, which Peter Thiel outlined a little bit in his book 0 to 1, creating something out of nothing, creating a computer out of minerals, creating a necklace chain out of various threads and things, creating something new that is useful, that can bring well-being. This is the most important form of value generation. So here's the really important thing. It's quite difficult in many markets, in many situations, to capture value. Because in order to capture value, you need to first establish an identity and a reputation and establish trust. Second, you need to educate your market. You need to show them how the ripple effects of an unknown. You have a new idea, they don't even know what the idea is, and then you've got to teach them how that idea that they don't know is going to have ripple effects that they don't fully understand. You got to have them believe in that so well that they want to give you resources, money, well-being to give you that idea. It's very, very, very difficult to do. However, it's very easy to share the idea. It's very easy to give something. It's very easy to help someone out. This video on YouTube is a good example. It takes 15 minutes of my time to share this. And maybe it does some good. Maybe it does a lot of good for one person, a little bit of good for someone else. It ripples out. and I capture none of the value. And that's okay, because part of the thread that led me to give this talk is that in many cases, if we look at the world as a whole, when we take each of us the opportunity to give something we can easily give, that is a 0 to 1 type of equation, something out of nothing, an idea that now has a form, we're generating wealth within the world. Google's a great example of that, where the ability to search for great things, and the web and stuff is another great example. The ability to search for great things and have great experiences you could not even know about, without that, is a 0 to 1 type of equation. It's something out of nothing. What I want to suggest is that you have resources. We all have resources that are very easy for us to give. And perhaps in at least some of our time, we can build the wealth of the world by changing the question, how much wealth can I capture from this transaction, to how much wealth can I generate? What's the most potent way that I can spend these moments of my time to create the most well-being for the most number of people, and let it be okay that none of that value is captured, it's just going out. I'll leave you with that to mull over, and I'd love to hear what you do with it.